Hi everybody, just a little summary of the preach from Sunday where we looked at God as the creator of male and female. And the reason I sort of focused on this one is because this is a real pinch point in society. I mean, I really think that this is an area that the evil one really looks to get in and to cause division. At the very core of our identity, that's where the devil often goes for. Our personal identities, but also as a consequence, our relationships. And we started by thinking about how in society there was a lot of confusion about what it looks to be male and female. There's been some good things that have happened over the last several years around how we've seen roles being less restrictive as we perhaps used to see, both perhaps in church as well as at home. But also there's a lot of confusion around male and female, and a lot of people that I meet, actually when you get down to it, sometimes feel like I'm not sort of performing as a man, I'm not being a man, or I'm not sort of being a woman enough. And I think that sort of underlies why we looked at this. And the Bible's really clear that male and female is at the heart of why God's made us human. And actually the call to be man and female is about reflecting God himself. God is neither male nor female, but actually he's imaged by both. And we looked at this idea of complementary pairs, the way God creates in Genesis. And we see the pinnacle of his creation, this man, but he was alone. And actually he only fully images God when he's actually partnered with this complementary other, just like we see that in the Trinity and the Godhead. Father, Son and Holy Spirit are complementary to one another. So we see that in his creation of human beings to show something of God's nature and what he's like. And so actually we are male and female to point to what God is like. It's important to show what God is like. Then secondly, we talked about identity, that we're male and female and we receive our identity through our bodies. And again, the issue of identity is big in culture. Who am I is a really important question. And we looked at the internal identity narrative that says you find who you are by looking inside. We looked at Forky from Toy Story 4, but of course there's a problem there because our feelings often change. They're flexible, and actually when we look inside we don't always like what we see, and when we look inside truth isn't always what we feel, and that actually the best way we can get our identity isn't from trying to discover it from inside. It's neither by trying to achieve it from outside by saying I'm just going to be all macho to be a man, or I'm going to look like this to be a real woman. No, actually we receive a solid, stable identity from God. It's received, not discovered or achieved. And that's just tremendous good news, particularly for young people who are under pressure to create these identities online and to create this and be that, but actually we can receive. And when we know our identity, we can look at each other in the eye and say, God has made you a man, and now you're free to be who you're meant to be. And we need to resist those stereotypes, which are often culturally mediated, that say, oh, it means this to be a man, it means that to be a man. And when you're not feeling like that, you then feel less of a man, if that makes sense. So we need to resist that. Transgender stuff kind of feeds off stereotypes, and they're not biblical. And then finally, we looked at our vocation. Male and female points to why we are here. And we looked at marriage, and we looked at celibacy, and that actually both together within a church demonstrates, again, something about why we're here. And that actually we're pointing to something far greater. We're pointing to the joining of Christ and his church. Again, it's that complementary pairing. It's actually all about God and not all about us. And therefore, whether we're married or celibate, actually we complement one another. And it shows the value of each to have them both in the church. And then finally, we just looked at what this looks like in the church. We talked about men and women are equal and precious in God's sight. Neither one of them is superior. We can all be as much like Jesus. We've got access to all the spiritual gifts in many ways. Our individuality, we don't often think about male and female because we're all so different. And that's absolutely right, as we looked at the week before this sermon about God being a diverse creator of diversity. But actually God is calling us, I believe, to be fathers and mothers, to be brothers and sisters. And there are certain things that mark us out. It's not that we have to try and become a father. Well, no, we are called. We are fathers. We are spiritual fathers, whether we've got our own biological children or not. And we are spiritual mothers. And the question is, are we living as those spiritual fathers and spiritual mothers? We don't have to attain it. Are we living like it? And so the questions for us really are what are your response, number one? What's your response to what you've heard? Number two, where do you see the challenges, the pinch points for men and women in culture today? Number 3, how would you define biblical masculinity and femininity? That's a big one. Number 4, how would you counsel someone who thinks that they're trapped in the wrong body? Another big one. And number 5, what does it look like to be fathers and mothers in our local church setting? What does it look like for Hope Church for this male and female dynamic to play out? Hope you enjoy those questions. Over to you.